Some people think revenge has to be loud, angry confrontations, screaming matches, explosive moments. But sometimes the most satisfying revenge is quiet, patient, calculated, and just petty enough to hurt the right amount. Today's stories are about people who were pushed, underestimated, or disrespected, and chose not to explode, but to wait, to think, and to respond in ways their targets never saw coming. These are not fantasies, these are true Reddit stories. Welcome to Reddit Echoes. Story 1. Revenge against thieving squatters. I live in a very small rural town, about 100 kilometers from the nearest city. There are maybe 200 people here. No shops, no traffic, nothing happens unless someone's cow gets loose. My partner and I don't have kids, and every year we take our annual leave all at once. This time, 4 other couples, our closest friends, decided we'd all go together on a 4-wheel drive camping trip up to Cape York. Proper off-grid stuff. Rivers, creeks, beaches, fishing, waterfalls. We planned to be gone for just under 4 weeks. My neighbor came with us too, but his wife stayed home. She hates camping. About 2 weeks into the trip, we passed through a small town near the tip of Australia to fuel up. The moment we got phone reception, my phone went absolutely insane. Missed calls, texts, messages, all from my neighbor's wife. Her messages were simple and terrifying. She said there was a man, a woman, and a small child living in my house. She'd asked them what they were doing there. They said they were friends of the owner. When she asked who the owner was, they couldn't tell her. I called a friend of mine who's a police sergeant. He said he'd check it out the next day. I drove back to the fuel station to keep reception, and the sergeant called me back. He confirmed it. 2 adults and a child were inside my house, unloading furniture from a trailer. When he asked the man for a rental agreement, the guy suddenly got defensive. He said it was a civil matter between him and me, that the police had no authority. He even said that if pushed, he'd claim squatters' rights. And that was it. The police left. My friend told me his hands were tied. He warned me not to force them out because they could sue for assault or damages. Apparently, this kind of thing happens more than you'd think. Squatters move in, wait for a court order, and live rent-free for 6 to 12 months, or they get forcibly removed and then sue. I went back to camp and told my friends. For 6 hours, we talked through every option, dragging them out, court, doing nothing. Court would take months. Violence would ruin our lives. Eventually, we decided on a plan. The next day, I called the sergeant and explained it. He paused, then said, very carefully, that it was a good plan. He also said he could never officially advise it, and that I absolutely could not rush it or deviate from it. So we waited. My neighbor's wife told us they weren't damaging anything yet, so we didn't rush home. We finished most of the trip, then cut it 4 days short. When we finally got back to town, we didn't go to my house. All of us drove straight to my neighbor's place instead. 5 vehicles on a road that usually sees 1 a day. I could tell the squatters were watching us from my house. We ignored them. After about an hour, they seemed to relax and went back inside. We set up tents on my neighbor's property, about 100 meters away, slightly elevated. From there, we could watch my house without being obvious. The first day, they didn't leave. The second day, same thing. That worried me. Our entire plan depended on them leaving together. On the 3rd morning, the man left alone, then came back half an hour later. We figured he was testing us. The woman and kid were still inside, so we did nothing. Then, around 11, all 3 of them got into their car and drove off. One of our friends followed them every 15 minutes with updates. When they passed the nearest shop, we assumed they were heading to a larger town several hours away. That was our moment. We went straight to my house and moved everything they owned, every bit of it, out onto the road beside the fence. Then I grabbed a massive industrial chain from my shed and locked it across my driveway. The rest of the property was fenced, no way in. Then my friend called again. The squatters had hired a trailer. For a second, we wondered if they were moving out and we jumped the gun. But then he updated us again. They were at another house, loading more furniture, hugging people goodbye. They weren't leaving. They were coming back with more stuff. So we moved their belongings even further down the road. I borrowed my neighbor's tractor, scooped everything up, and dumped it another 100 meters away. Then I parked the tractor directly in front of the chained driveway, bucket facing the road. Clear message. When they came back an hour later, they stopped at their pile of belongings. The man stormed up my driveway. All 11 of us were waiting. He started yelling about his agreement with the owner. I told him I was the owner. Then he switched to squatters' rights. He said we'd acted unlawfully and that the police were coming. They arrived. Same sergeant. The squatter went off, ranting. The sergeant listened, then calmly said maybe while they were away, these people had squatted where they claimed to live. Civil matter. Take it to court. But for now, this property was in my possession, and they needed to leave. The squatter tried to accuse me of throwing their stuff onto the road. The police asked for proof, video, photos. The woman said she saw me do it. That's when my friend stepped forward and said he followed them all day and had dashcam footage. The sergeant asked her what time she witnessed it. She answered confidently. My friend played the video of that exact time, showing her in a shopping center car park 100 kilometers away. After that, the sergeant didn't believe a word she said. He told her she could make a statement if she wanted, but he'd charge her with lying under oath. They left. Later, the sergeant told me he followed them around town because they were clearly looking for another place to squat. When they noticed the police tail, they headed out of town. To speed things up, he pulled them over and ticketed them for overloading their trailer. That was the end of it. My advice? If squatters move in, wait until they all leave and retake possession. It's faster and cheaper than court. And next time we go on holiday, we're getting a house sitter.
Story 2. Linguistic petty revenge in an elevator. I live in a high-rise building in downtown Vancouver, about 50 floors up. One evening, I was coming back from a sunset run. I was tired, sweaty, and just wanted to shower and disappear into my apartment. A family entered the building with me and politely held the door. They were speaking French to each other. I thanked them in English. No big deal. English is the main language here. We all ended up in the same elevator. It was the parents and their 3 kids, all boys, probably around 8 to 10 years old enough to understand right from wrong. They kept chatting in French as we went up. Since French is my mother tongue, I understood everything. About 30 floors up, the dad turned to one of his sons and asked, in French, "So, is she pretty or not pretty?" My brain froze. For a split second, I hoped he meant someone else. Then one of the kids answered very clearly, "Not pretty." I stopped breathing. They were talking about me, right in front of me, assuming I couldn't understand a word. I stood there in silence, staring at the elevator doors, feeling my face burn. I'm not confrontational. My instinct in moments like that is usually to freeze and wait for it to be over. But as the elevator climbed, I realized something. I wasn't the one who should feel awkward. So I waited. When my floor came up, I stepped out. Just before the doors closed, I turned back and said in perfect French, "Bonsoir. Have a good evening." The look on their faces was priceless. The dad went pale. The kids went silent. The mom just stood there, frozen, like she'd left her body. I walked away smiling. In hindsight, I wish I'd held eye contact until the doors closed, but honestly, that moment was enough. Story 3. Ex-husband, insurance, and 5 years too late. I was married for 17 years to what I like to call a very manly man. He had a job that earned money. I did everything else. I handled the admin, the planning, the mental load. I scheduled his dentist appointments. I bought birthday cards for his parents. I remembered everything so he didn't have to. 5 years ago, I left him. We both moved on, separate lives, no contact. I barely thought about him anymore. Then one day, I started getting calls. He was annoyed, aggressive, demanding. Apparently, he'd never removed me from his car insurance, and now the company was saying I had to call to fix it. He kept insisting it was urgent and somehow my fault. He called me every day for a week. Finally, I called the insurance company myself. The woman on the phone was very calm. She checked the records and said, "Oh, no, we absolutely would have removed you. He just never asked. There's no record of him ever calling." Interesting. Then she added, "You know, switching him from married to single will raise his rates significantly. Is he sure he wants to do this now?" I laughed. Yes, very sure. I told her I hadn't lived there in 5 years, so the policy should probably be backdated. She laughed too. A few minutes later, she confirmed he'd be getting a very large bill. Not my problem anymore.
Story 4. The loudest gift I've ever given. My sister-in-law lives the high life. She's a paralegal sitting on a trust fund. Her husband brags openly about scamming military disability benefits to pay their mortgage. They're rolling in money. I'm talking 8 cars, Land Rover, Porsche, Tesla, prime Seattle real estate. Every holiday she shows up with a new designer bag, Louis Vuitton, Dior, Yves Saint Laurent. Meanwhile, I pour my heart into gift giving. I start shopping in August. Thoughtful gifts, themes, Anthropologie advent calendars, Nordstrom purses, luxury beauty products, cozy knits, golf gear. One rule: if I wouldn't love receiving it myself, I don't give it. For 5 years, I didn't receive a single thank you note from her. Not one. I even started gifting her thank you card sets with stamps. Subtle, right? She never got the hint. What do we get in return? Literal garbage. Goodwill puzzles with missing pieces, cheap Disney knickknacks, junk from people who own multiple luxury cars. So I adjusted my strategy. Enter my nephew. Loud, energetic, perfect. That summer, I found the holy grail at an outdoor market, a pop gun that made the most ungodly noise imaginable. We skipped the holidays that year, but Grandma filled us in. Apparently, the pop gun was such a hit that it became a problem. My nephew wouldn't put it down. It was the only toy he cared about. The noise drove everyone insane. My sister-in-law's parents left after 15 minutes. Mission accomplished. If you've made it to the end, thank you for listening. Petty revenge isn't about being cruel. It's about balance, about taking back control in situations where direct confrontation would only make things worse. Some of these stories probably made you laugh. Some might have made you uncomfortable, and maybe one of them felt a little too familiar. If that's the case, you're not alone. If you enjoy true Reddit stories like these, consider subscribing to Reddit Echoes. News stories are shared regularly, and sometimes hearing how someone else handled a situation helps us feel a little less powerless in our own. Take care of yourself, and thanks for listening.